Good morning, everyone. My name is Nelson Delgado, and today I'll be conducting a presentation on graceful language and how we can use empathetic and/or very receptive techniques and why it's important in order to facilitate the best communication possible with just about anybody that you're going to be engaged with. So today, I'm going to discuss the graces and embodying the graces during communication, as well as other aspects that even some hostage negotiators use as a means to facilitate a true understanding of what the other person needs and how that can complement you in terms of, and if you hear a dog in the background, my apologies. I'm at home, my family's upstairs. And what I wanted to share is that when we focus in exactly on what the other person needs and how we can help, and whether this for just friendship or family oriented exchanges, or whether you're looking to negotiate a deal with potential clients, it's really important to really spend the most time listening, and asking certain questions that don't make them feel that they have to go on the defensive, as well as we'll talk about the F word, and it's not the kind of F word that most people think about. And let's proceed. You're going to learn a lot today. All right, so power of graceful language. So here's a wonderful quote from Buddha. Whatever words we utter should be chosen with care, for people will hear them and be influenced by them for good or ill. And that's because when it comes to vibration, vibration actually affects matter. So whether you're looking at it in terms of cymatics, and again, apologies for the dog barking, if you hear. The words you speak will definitely impact someone's emotional state and psychological state. So whether you're saying something poorly to them or judging or so on and so forth, regardless, it's going to affect them if they haven't been educated or trained with the tools to maintain their integrity and their inner authority. So if they don't have a strong sense of self, they're basically vulnerable to influence. And as a result, their health, and if they don't know how to process emotions correctly, their physiology will in turn be affected by the adverse things that we tell them, or the adverse things we say, or the insinuations and manipulations that we can sometimes use to get things from people, and make them feel as if they have to acquiesce to us. So what we want is graceful, more empowering dialogue, so that we mutually can benefit from the exchange every single time that we connect with somebody. So moving on, how we can become better communicators. So common errors in communication are crossing your arms and leaning back like this. It's a defensive response when it comes to listening to others. And people might think that what they're saying is not going to be receptive, or they're not, the person that's receiving this communication from them is not going to try to understand their perspective. And so it's important for us to pay attention to our body language. When you're speaking loudly and quickly, feeling the need to drill a message into somebody, oftentimes what ends up happening, it's like throwing a boulder directly into a pond. You'll get more resistance on the initial, and person might decide to react, or might get triggered because something like this happened in the past, and they're probably going to react in a way that you may not like. And so it's important for us to try and use, and especially if you have a strong voice, to use it as consciously as possible. And if you speak carefully, what ends up happening is the person will then be more receptive to what you're trying to say, not just the words you speak, but the tone in which you say it in. The next one is bringing up the past, unconsciously allowing triggers to carry the frequency of the message. So if there's something that's happened to you in the past and you're trying to avoid that from happening again, it's important for us to pause before we respond to others, especially if they said something that bothers us and has continued to bother us from the past. So it's important to take a moment, step away, and then excuse yourself from the situation, and then go ahead and decide to um, um, articulate something that would be more easily accepted by the other person, so they don't feel like they have to defend themselves or react. Defending the feelings as truth when they are action-oriented responses, triggers from the soul that require contemplation before action. What that means is that feelings, it's true that you could be feeling a certain way, but the feeling isn't the truth. The feeling is a messenger saying, this person has said something that has affected you in some way. You either feel sad, angry, ashamed, or fearful. And it's important for you to take a moment to really interpret what the emotions are trying to say. They're messengers from the soul, and they are there to motivate you in terms of getting a response, but making sure that you are attuned to your intuition and whether or not you want to say the right thing to say, and if it feels good to say it before you say it, and is it the timing right, and should you use a heavier tone or should you use a lighter tone? Because when you're articulating how you feel, it's important that you understand that as long as they understand how they made you feel, or that whatever decisions they made made you feel a certain way, that way they understand that, oh, there's something about you that you need, and I would like to put you at ease that I haven't neglected that need, so that they can in the future include you, or at least bring awareness to how they can make you aware or provide awareness to you about what's going to happen or what's going on, so that we're in the know and we don't have to worry about being blindsided. The next one is interrupting the person. I can't wait for them to finish before I need to say something that I feel is more important. Understand that allowing someone to complete what they're trying to say and providing a pause before you say something is the absolute respect that you can pay them. When you do that and you repeat what they have said to you, or what they have said to you, then what you're saying to them is, I respect what you're trying to say, and I'm listening carefully, and I'm not going to interrupt you because I don't want to be interrupted. So it's important for us to really just hold on to what we're trying to say while we fully absorb both the message and the vibration behind what the person is trying to convey to us. Manipulation, putting a spin on a perspective to influence another's side with our best interests at heart. When we are using certain words in order to coerce or put a spin on something, so that they feel guilty or ashamed or afraid, or even saddened, what we don't want to do is we don't want to put them into those states in order to get what we want, because in the end, the person's intuition, if they actually are attuned to that, will detect if you are being disingenuous. Now, if they don't have a good connection to their intuition and their inner guidance in that moment, it'll likely come up later, which means they will develop a hesitation to have faith or trust that what you're trying to say is coming from the right place. So for future consideration, always seek to basically share what you need and why it's important to you, and how they can help facilitate that if possible. And then let them decide if that's what they want. Oftentimes, if the soul feels safe and inspired to assist you, it will encourage the psyche of the person to do so. So always try to be genuine and authentic with any requests or interests you want to share. And that way, the person that you're with doesn't have to feel like they have to be on guard with you whenever you guys are exchanging. Next one. Conscious communication and channeling the 7 graces. So the 7 graces can also be linked to the 7 energy centers. So the root chakra, the sacral chakra, the solar, heart, voice or throat, third eye or discernment center for seeing and discerning, and the crown, which is where you are essentially, that's where you're tethered to your higher self and a higher wisdom that's available. When we channel the graces that are associated with those areas, when we are aligned, it's easy to communicate from a centered state. So when you start with your root chakra, which if you're coming from a place of pride when you're communicating, that can result that the person might interpret that it's your ego that's speaking and not your true self. Reverence for others allows you to share your knowledge, or allowing them to share their knowledge and experience and gifts. Because when you revere what someone has to share with you, whether it be insight, wisdom, perspective, then you can get to choose of what that there is that you can appreciate. So when you revere the gifts and the frequencies the other brings, that person also feels a sense of self-esteem and respect from you, so that moving forward, there's mature communication that continues. Devotion, instead of greed, like only communicating for the sake of getting something from somebody. Devotion, when you're devoted to understanding what another person wants to contribute, or what another person wants to share, and you're listening to them, in a devoted sense, what you're doing is you're taking in the energy and you're interpreting their true needs. And this ties in really easily from sacral to solar plexus, where you develop an understanding. Because the more you are devoted to listening and understanding, what happens is that the person then feels safe around you. They're feeling that there's someone that's actually listening to me, that's trying to understand me. And therefore, this, what it does is it minimizes or reduces the need for any conflict. So it dissolves it. So there's no real need for defensiveness to ensue. And that's an important thing about conscious communication. Devote yourself to really understanding what the person needs, and giving them what you can, and because you can understand what they do need and that you respect their needs. But it doesn't mean that you have to give them everything that they want. Just search your intuitive, either gut or heart-oriented instincts, your core body, and find out if it feels good to proceed and engage moving forward. Courage to be vulnerable is what's truly needed right now, because a lot of us are so guarded around the heart that most of us have a heart wall, and the heart wall is usually based on trauma. And if you're growing up and your parents never really listened to you, what happens is that you don't feel like, or let's say your parents were critical of you when you were younger, then what ends up happening is that you develop a guarding that walls you up, because you don't want to be hurt by any judgment or any unconscious reaction from the other person. You definitely want to have the courage to be vulnerable, because the more you open up, then what ends up happening is the more people can see the real you. And because the real us is actually basically in the core, the heart and solar plexus area. And because we innately want to be compassionate, but it's hard to be compassionate when so much of us have been hurt in the past. So it's important for us to heal those wounds, especially around the heart, um, so that we can feel the courage to open up and share and allow people to see the real us and not feel afraid of being judged. Because if you love yourself and what you bring, then um, the other people appreciate it. You can spend more time with them, and the ones that don't, you can limit that exposure. Using the right tone, right timing, and right words to deliver the message that can be received easily. The tone of the voice is important because if there's a certain way you want to deliver a message, then make sure that the person is the right person that you feel will appreciate that tone. And using that intuition of yours to choose the right timing in which you express that message. And words are important because the more we can contemplate on what words that we can use, the clearer the message is. So it's always important to be present, grounded, and spend all the time you need to deliver that message correctly. Because if we do that, what ends up happening is that the people that are receiving our message will be far more receptive because they won't feel any need to defend themselves, to be on guard, or anything like that. Because the message doesn't have a context that feels as if in any way that they have to worry or have any insecurity, sense of insecurity before they reply. Integrating discernment and elevated wisdom from a higher source about when to deliver the message. When we essentially consciously request that we are open to receiving divine wisdom and inspiration before we communicate, what ends up happening is that when you quiet the mind, you let's say if it's full of thoughts like clouds, and you're able to zoom out of your position and maybe elevate your consciousness above the clouds and just being present in that above the atmosphere feeling. And what ends up happening is that you become more receptive to ideas and influences that are encouraging your co-creative ability. And when you do that, the end result is that you will in turn be able to bring that to the lower centers and try and ground it so that and you may not know why it comes up. And it's important to be open to and explore the possibilities of sharing that when your intuition says the timing is right. And you can create or you can utilize body language that triggers other people's curiosity as to why or what you may have to offer that could be a benefit. Regardless of how they will receive it, it's worth considering because not everybody may be doing that. And if you allow yourself to elevate to a higher perspective, you may be able to get inspiration that allows you to resolve certain variables that are challenging in any project or any challenge that you're facing. So the more you elevate, the more inspiration you get, and then using your intuition to guide you as to when to share it will actually bring you more likely more magnetism to you, and other people will be more encouraged to ask you to share, and in turn you'll feel like your gifts, your you're shifting and you're accommodating of your aligned states of communication become a much needed resource that anyone that appreciates you will come back to for more. And that way you'll feel a sense of confidence, self-esteem, and trust that you are doing things that are going to keep you in flow and attracting more positive outcomes moving forward. The power of how. The word how is great because it engages co-creative inspiration and dialogue. So when someone needs something from you, the benefits of the word how invokes inquiry from you to the person you are aiming to serve. So if someone's coming to you and they need something from you, when you say, how would you like me to accomplish this? What ends up happening is it provokes them from sharing not only that they need it, but how they would like it to manifest. And then you can, when you're doing that, it gives you an idea as where they're coming from in terms of their needs. Because the more you ask how, the more you'll learn about the true understanding of what's behind the request. And how stimulates the other person's ability to communicate clearly, so that when they're talking with you, they're making sure that their needs, all the details of those needs, are being addressed. And when you put how, to put most of the effort on the other person to become more conscious of the root of that need, then you'll be able to address it if you feel as if you are inspired to address it. If you have an intuition that, okay, this is what they need, this is how they want it done, and if I do it that way, they'll be happy. Simple as that. But if there's something there you feel an inkling of, I don't know if I really want to do that, this feels like it might compromise me, then you can always share how you feel about what could be the possibilities of how that can affect you. And that way you can ask, how can we make it so that I'm not going to be compromising myself and still helping facilitate an outcome that you're looking for. And when you do that, how helps us define if we really want to be part of the solution before we say yes. So when we're using how, it's really, really powerful, because it facilitates more responsibility on the person that we are seeking to understand the needs of, so that the outcome becomes something that is mutually beneficial to ourselves and them as possible. So integrate how into your dialogue. How to use the F word. It's not the F word we think of, it's fair. And fair can sometimes be a word that can be used to manipulate. So fair should not be used to make other people feel like they are cheating you, so that you can get more of what you want, or trying to facilitate maybe an uneven negotiation. Fair should not be used to manipulate others to getting what you want. So again, when it comes to fair, you really want to use it in a way that makes the other person feel as if they have nothing to worry about in regards to you and what you want to provide for them, and how they can mutually benefit. Both of you can mutually benefit from the experience. So if you use it from the beginning, such as, before we begin coming to terms on an agreement, please inform me of when you feel like something isn't fair so I can correct it. Because what you're doing is that you're preemptively asking them that while we're doing a dialogue and we're negotiating something, I want to make sure that you feel like you're going to get benefit out of this as much as I will. And when you do that, you're going to create a stronger, more cohesive, more mature, and healthy exchange than if you just use fair as a means to get what you want and undermine the other person's intention um, of having something that comes out well for them too. So it's, unfortunately, fair is unconsciously used as a tool um, and to get what people want. And when you use it as a companion in a conversation, then you can develop trust right from the beginning, and it helps facilitate a very prosperous exchange moving forward. Yes. As a Gemini, I can attest to this. Sometimes I talk too much because I like to give a lot of feedback, a lot of value when I'm engaging with people. But I've learned through my practice that listening more allows me to really understand what the person needs and how I can help them best. So, how you can listen. It's not just about with your ears. Listening also is reading body language to determine their position on a subject, setting the tone for the emotional context for their needs to address their challenges. Eye contact informs you and them of whether either of you is present or engaged. Repeating what you are saying both confirms you're listening and makes sure that they are clear on what they need. So when you're doing all this, you are really getting a gist of what someone else needs. And when you do that, what ends up happening is that you essentially are creating an environment where they feel safe to open up and become transparent. And when they're doing that, then you can really engage with them in ways where they feel like you're in sync, and that maybe you can help them, maybe you can't, but if you wanted to, you can also facilitate a means to finding the correct resources to really help them in their struggle or their challenges. So this way you'll only need to provide what they need and nothing more. And that way you're saving your energy, and you're only putting in enough energy, and yet you can actually get more energy from the person when they're fully appreciative of how you've helped them, and yet you haven't done too much. So this is something that I hope and I think that most therapists practice, and that way they can do the best job instead of always being in their mind. Really paying attention to someone's physiology, their breathing, their eye contact, really helps you understand how to address their needs, and both emotionally, psychologically, and even physically, possibly even spiritually. And the greatest communicators are the ones that speak the least. So to me, that's what I would have to say, is that sometimes you don't have to say a lot, and you can just say a few words or maybe a sentence, and with the right tone and the right frequency and at the right time, and it could really impact somebody in a way that it can impact somebody negatively or positively. The choice is ours. All we can do is try and come from the heart, and hopefully that heart's had enough healing. How can healing help you become a better communicator? Benefits of releasing stored unresolved trauma, especially emotional trauma, to get rid of the triggers that interfere with conscious communication and graceful language. Releasing unresolved anger is going to help us become less defensive and more empathetic, which creates win-win exchanges that feel safe with others. Anger is about integrity. And so long as you are communicating with integrity and respect, generally the person will be more receptive to you. But if you are triggered and you have held on to a lot of anger, it's very easy to be unconsciously triggered and say things out of context or that you may regret. Releasing unresolved sadness helps us become less attached to the patterns of communication that don't serve the progressive process. So when you're sad, like whether you're discouraged or you're disappointed, oftentimes when it comes to communication, and you really want to pay attention to how you're delivering your message. You want to really, maybe even ask friends and family about when you communicate. What is it about your body language, your tone of voice, that facilitates resistance from them towards you? And all of us have experienced this, and it's important for us to get perspective from other people and to really ask for the truth, because when other people share their feelings about how we engage with them, and sometimes when we were difficult and when we were trying to do too much or say too much, and how they felt, we really gain perspective on what changes in behavior that really need to come through, so that we can really truly feel safe and feel in flow and more, let's say, positive about further communication with other people. And when we resolve the unresolved, when we resolve that sadness, oftentimes we feel a sense of rejuvenation because we now know what's not working for us and how we can change it. Releasing unresolved fear helps us become more present and aware of how to engage others with less anxiety and be more grounded in social exchanges. So when we have anxiety in regards to social communication, maybe because others have bullied us in the past, or we may be feeling rattled by or jumpy or aversive because of we didn't have very good communication set up with our parents, with our siblings, and that made us generally be inclined to be overprotective and maybe very reserved in how we share what we want to say, for fear of judgment or discrimination, or even panic from the unconscious reactions of others. When we resolve that fear, then we can feel more confident and grounded as to when it would be right to share our perspective, so long as we're not coming to a place of reactivity. The next one is releasing unresolved shame, which helps us become more confident in ourselves and maintains a healthy level of integrity when in dialogue with overbearing people. Now, if you have said something wrong, done something wrong towards somebody, and you're upset, there could be you could be feeling upset with yourself because maybe you could have channeled that differently, and but at the same time, some of us sometimes feel justified for whatever reason in using language that can be hurtful. Shame is your emotional trigger to get yourself back to integrity, to apologize, and to correct. If someone is making you feel ashamed for whatever you've said or you've done, use your intuition and check in with your soul to see if them shaming you is justified. And it's important for us to heal that shame from the past, so that when we process shame and we were asked for its release after we've either been shamed or guilted into doing something, or we feel guilty for actions that we've done, when we resolve that shame, what ends up happening is it makes it easier for us to change. And as we change, we can be complemented on improving ourselves. And when we do this, it usually fosters encouragement from others and boosts your self-esteem and integrity and your self-respect, as well as respect for others. So when we're doing this, when we're resolving all these emotional signatures, what ends up happening is that we are far more conscious in our communicating with others, and we can establish better rapport, stronger networks, more supportive, interdependent groups of people that we can always depend on for support, and that we can support them during their time of need. So it's important for us to get our healing on. Graceful language is all about the subtle energy signatures shared in the details of communication and how to work with them consciously. So when you are communicating and you're using language, channeling those graces, reverence, devotion, understanding, courage and vulnerability, good counsel, meaning contemplating before you speak, seeking inspiration about the right words and the right tone and the right time for delivery, and the wisdom from a higher knowing to guide you into delivering message or communication that is coming from a benevolent space that only wants to see progress and evolution and growth, will create immense new opportunities for you and encourage your process in self-mastery. And people will be more able to gravitate to you in terms of some sort of either position of leadership or influence, because you're aligned, and everyone appreciates when someone provides input from an aligned state. In regards to me and why I decided to do this presentation today, it's really about you. I've had decades of service experience, but it was all empathy driven. As so long as I was attuned to the needs and or was receptive to the needs of others, what they truly wanted, I could find exactly what they needed to help facilitate that. Sometimes it wasn't what they wanted, sometimes it was what they needed. And when we consciously address that, the person will always be satisfied with what you give them. Now, I went through depression, and it took quite a bit of time for me to figure out how to get out of it. And really, the soul, especially during this time, is putting a lot of pressure on us. We're seeing a lot of people struggling right now, and it's because they're all trying to figure it out in their head when they really need to fall into their body. And that's what I had to do long ago to conquer my depression. I had to surrender to my heart. I had to surrender to my soul, and I had to let it guide me, as well as a higher force. That is the reason why I do what I do today. And I have never been happier doing this compared to any part of my time of my life doing anything else. I truly feel aligned and inspired every day to really understand the needs of other people and how to help them understand where they're not aligned and what's contributing to that, and help them purge it, understand it, why that came, how to prevent accumulating more of that later on in life, and to provide the tools necessary to realign to their true nature and to understand how they can live a theme of their life that is natural for them and where they can find prosperity. And yes, I am providing free 1-hour complimentary sessions, so that include a life theme reading as well as emotional purging, so that you are both releasing what you really need to release at this point in your life to attract what you really want moving forward, and as well as aligning yourself so that you can first at least understand where your genius lies and how to get through that first, so that you can get in in alignment with attracting more of what you want and the people that want to seek you out to get that service from you, so that you can in turn receive what they can provide for you. There's also other areas such as love, understanding your emotional intelligence, your spiritual intelligence, your mental intelligence, how you do well in terms of vocational alignment, how you can integrate into society, and the culmination of all of that when you go through that process and you have not completed your golden path, but you can walk it easily every day. And as opposed to like, this is a final destination. No, there is no real final destination. We are infinite beings, and time is infinite. There is no, I would say, calendar that the galaxy runs on. It's really just a matter of existence and enjoying existence in this wonderful playground of consciousness. And for us to enjoy that thoroughly, we really need to maybe decide to not engage and or collaborate with the shadow of deafness, which is to be constantly worried all the time about what we have to do next, so on and so forth, or reactive in terms of noisy and just really trying to trigger change in aggressive ways, and that can meet with resistance, and definitely looking forward to trying to get some insight on the true needs of what people need from us and what the world needs, as well as maybe even from that, when you're going for that gift of insight, you may find that when you really truly understand what's really needed from you, and you can feel good about contributing, what ends up happening is you might reach states where you might have an epiphany on how this is possible. And that's a state that we all really need to get into, because there's just so much polarity going on right now. And what we all need is more listening and less talking. And hopefully this helps you motivate yourself and inspire you to be more graceful in your communication and be more receptive. And in so doing, you'll find that we don't have to feel so exhausted trying to achieve something so aggressively and facing resistance. Thank you very much for your time today. And you can always reach me out at the contact information below, as well as through email. And you can also visit my website. I appreciate all the time that you spent with me today in terms of watching this video. And I look forward to serving you in the not too distant future. Take care, everyone, and have a lovely life. Namaste, and God bless.